Spanish on immigration offender too, no? No. All right, sir. You mean
Feeling right now. Can I ask your reaction?
no question.
No question. What country are you from, sir?
Don't answer any questions, all right? Stay as calm as you
Sir, are you a U.S. citizen?
This guy is not your friend.
Do you have any reaction?
Remember your right to remain silent.
When people arrive at immigration court for their hearing, they often expect a simple process: sit, answer questions, and go home. But in reality, many are stunned to find themselves taken into custody before they ever get the chance to plead their case. It doesn't always happen in the middle of the night at the border. Sometimes it happens right there in a quiet courtroom, under fluorescent lights in front of their families. One major reason for this is that immigration enforcement treats certain arrivals as a flight risk. Even if someone has shown up dutifully to every hearing, the government might believe that given the stakes of removal, they'll vanish before the next court date. So officers wait, watch, and sometimes quietly approach with handcuffs ready. For people with past criminal convictions, even minor ones, detention can be almost automatic. A misdemeanor from years ago can become the trigger for mandatory custody, regardless of whether the person has turned their life around. In these moments, old mistakes can feel like inescapable shadows that follow them right into court. Immigration courts aren't criminal courts, but the consequences can be just as severe. Many don't realize that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, officers can arrest them inside the courthouse itself, transforming a space that should feel like a place to resolve legal questions into something more like an ambush. Families often gather outside immigration court with children clutching toys, hoping this will be the day their loved one is finally allowed to stay. When they see an arrest, it can feel like the world is collapsing in slow motion. Officers don't always explain much in the moment. The person might simply be led away with a vague assurance that they'll get more information soon. Some detentions are the result of administrative errors. A case file might show that someone failed to appear for a prior hearing when, in fact, the notice was never delivered. In these situations, a judge may issue an order of removal in absentia, and ICE can act on it, even if the person is standing right there trying to clear things up. The Department of Homeland Security uses complex risk assessment tools to decide who should be detained. These algorithms weigh factors like employment history, family ties, and criminal background, but they can't always capture the nuance of a life. For the person being detained, it feels like a cold, impersonal calculation deciding their fate. Another reason detentions happen at court is when someone loses their case that day. A judge might deny asylum, cancel a stay of removal, or rule that there is no legal basis to remain. In that instant, the court becomes a place of finality. Officers step forward to carry out the order before the person can walk out the door. In some cities, ICE officers don't even wear uniforms in court. They blend in, watching silently until the moment comes. This element of surprise makes the process feel all the more surreal and frightening. One minute, you're sitting with your lawyer. The next, you're being told to stand up and put your hands behind your back. Many immigrants show up to court voluntarily, hoping their cooperation will weigh in their favor. But when they're detained anyway, it sends a chilling message through entire communities. Even doing everything right doesn't guarantee you'll walk back out. For people who have lived in the U.S. for decades, detention at court is especially shocking. They may have U.S. citizen children, mortgages, and steady jobs. Yet when the government decides they're subject to mandatory detention, none of those ties seem to matter. Language barriers make it worse. People often don't fully understand why they're being arrested. Even with interpreters, the legal jargon can sound like a foreign language within a foreign language. Another layer of fear and confusion. When children witness their parents being detained at court, the trauma can echo for years. Some kids refuse to return to the courthouse, terrified that every visit will end the same way. The courthouse becomes synonymous with loss and separation. Attorneys try to prepare their clients for this possibility. They review the risks carefully and sometimes bring copies of important documents or a suitcase with basic necessities, just in case detention happens that day. Still, nothing can fully prepare someone for the moment it becomes real. Immigration law gives the government broad power to detain. There is no right to a court-appointed lawyer, no guaranteed bond hearing within days. Once in custody, people may wait weeks or months to ask for release. Even people eligible for bond must often convince a judge they aren't a flight risk or a danger to the community. The burden of proof falls on them, an upside-down system compared to criminal courts, where the government must prove why you should stay locked up. Immigration courts are overloaded, and the backlog of cases grows every year. Sometimes, detaining a person is a way to make sure the case stays on track. It may sound bureaucratic, but behind every case number is a human being with a story, a family, and a future hanging in the balance. In some states, sanctuary policies try to limit ICE arrests in court. But federal officers still have jurisdiction, and they often argue that courthouses are the safest place to conduct arrests because people are already screened for weapons. Detention can be a form of leverage. The government knows that some people, faced with the prospect of months or years behind bars while fighting a case, will give up and agree to deportation rather than endure the uncertainty. For asylum seekers, the stakes are even higher. If they lose their claim, they could be sent back to countries where their lives are in danger. The weight of that fear is almost impossible to describe, and it often makes every minute of detention feel like an eternity. Public defenders and nonprofit legal teams race to file motions and emergency stays when their clients are detained. They juggle phone calls to ICE, faxes to the court, and frantic family members begging for answers. It's a scramble against time. Sometimes people are detained not because of what they did, but because of bureaucratic delays. Fingerprint checks, missing files, or background investigations can trigger automatic custody until the paperwork clears. In some courts, entire hallways are reserved for ICE processing. If you look closely, you'll see people waiting behind frosted glass doors, hands folded in their laps, trying to stay calm. Their loved ones pace outside, pressing their palms against the glass. Judges often remind everyone that they have no control over ICE enforcement. They can grant relief or deny it, but when it comes to who gets handcuffed, the judge's authority stops at the courtroom door. Observers and journalists have called these arrests silent raids. They don't make headlines the way border crossings do, but in many ways, they are more shocking. An invisible system sweeping people away in the very place where they came to comply with the law. Critics argue that this practice undermines trust in the justice system. If people fear detention every time they come to court, they're less likely to show up, making it harder for the government to process cases fairly and efficiently. For many, the most surreal part is how quickly it happens. One moment you're sitting on a wooden bench with your number in hand, and the next you're walking through a door that locks behind you. Everything familiar falls away. The trauma doesn't end when the person is removed from the courtroom. They may be transferred to remote detention centers hundreds of miles away, making it nearly impossible for family to visit or for lawyers to meet with them in person. These quiet arrests at immigration court illustrate how the system blends legal proceedings with enforcement. For the people swept into custody, the line between courtroom and jail disappears, replaced by the harsh reality of detention and the uncertainty of what comes next. If you look around any immigration courthouse, you'll see the hidden tension. People clutching folders and rosaries, hoping that today will not be the day their lives are upended. Yet for many, that day comes without warning, forever changing the meaning of showing up to fight for a chance to stay.